People keep claiming, Christianity is the truth, Islam is the truth, this is the truth, and people throw around this word truth. Truth is not your feelings. That's not truth. Truth is something that's still there when you stop believing in it. History, although it depends on the teller, if you really look at what happened, it's like forensics. Like, there is a truth there. Now, if we're intelligent enough to, have an accuracy with that or not is, obviously shown in our, the errors we make in forensics. But the universe keeps a record of what happens. At least it is a record of what happens and what's happened. It doesn't seem to forget like we do. Alright. I've been catching a lot of shit. Mostly about the whole God thing, but some of it about evolution, like basically the God thing in disguise. If you don't think that evolution happened, that's your right. Yeah, you don't have to. I'm not trying to tell you that you have to believe that. I mean, you're an idiot if you don't. Like, alright, you're ignorant if you don't believe it and you haven't examined it, and you're a fucking idiot if you've examined the evidence. And I don't mean reading Christian books written about evolution, because that's not the source. Though, all of it's going to be twisted and it's going to be misquoted. Oh my god. The only answer to evolution, to how we have a complex being, the only viable answer available, and it's fucking a beautiful answer, not because of the intelligence of those people that answered it, although those people are fucking intelligent, it's because it's the truth. Base compounds were around, and on Earth there were conditions that, for whatever reason, we don't know why the universe was created, or how life started. We can guess. We've got a lot of really good guesses. Evolution isn't a guess. The primordial soup thing is sort of a different theory. It's not evolution. People are like, oh, the theory of evolution, the theory of gravity. It's just called a theory because we're still trying to determine the nuances, the ins and outs of it. We're breaking it, like the base building blocks of evolution. We already know. We already have them. We're not lacking like the 4 things that make up evolution. But at the beginning of life, you have basic compounds. It's been simulated, although it's happened billions of years on Earth, it took billions of years to happen, these compounds have been produced in minutes in a laboratory. You take some of the early gunk that was around on Earth, carbon dioxide, methane, etc., and you run electricity through it, or you hit it with radiation, the kind that you would expect for an Earth to have, or to be hit with. It is hit with now, this sort of radiation, but more so when you don't have an ozone yet. And it produces this sort of organic sludge. So we know where that sort of organic stuff came from. I'm not a big fan of the primordial soup theory, but to each his own. The real idea that I'm trying to go here is that when you have particles, when you have molecules, groupings of atoms, some influence, well, all of them influence the things around them. Some more than others, like clay. Clay produces, like when clay dries and when clay forms, it replicates, it assembles other little bits to make this hard clay, like as water runs down through it and so on and so forth. This isn't about disproving God. I'm not going to get into the fossil fucking record and shit like that. This is about evolution, just sort of a basic overview. And there's a lot of non-organic self-assembling, like crystals, for instance. Crystals are self-organizing. They slide in together and they arrange each other on a molecular level. Now, we have a protein, a set of nucleotides that assembles itself. It influences the junk around it on a small level, and it chemically reacts to it, and chemical reactions happen. Chemical reactions happen on a small scale, and they can be manipulated. Well, it just so happened, or it happened that some replicating small organic bits of material came about. Like they bumped into each other, lightning, radiation, whatever. That organic paste or whatever is easy to make. It's easy to make, and it's something you would expect on early Earth. From dead Earth, from Earth forming with no life on it, with nothing, like just battered ground, you would expect this sort of organic sludge to come about. Now that you have this sludge, some of the molecules somewhere on Earth started replicating. Now, this isn't a very like far-fetched idea. Like it seems like it, like, oh, they just wanted to change. No, there's literally billions and billions and billions of types of these, like just all different types of molecules that do all sort of different things. They have different electromagnetic properties. They have different chemical properties. But when you really get down to it, life came from something that replicated itself. Like some series of events came about, and we can set up series of events in labs. You can look at anything in your home, you can turn on a light and watch a series of events happen to molecules, and you can see light produced. You can fucking move your hand around and see the product of electrical signals being run through your hand in a network that's been developed by natural selection. But these sort of, it has to be explained that like chemical events happen. They do happen. And it's not always directed. There isn't always a conscious mind behind directing everything, unless you think that maybe it's the, noodly appendage manipulating everything around. It's the stupidest idea, that God's doing this all. Because it's very consistent, it's predictable, and it's not subject to outside emotion. Like, you can't, like, close your eyes and be like, the train's not going to hit me, and because of your belief that the train's not going to hit you, it doesn't hit you. For one reason or another, it'll hit you or not hit you, but it won't be influenced by what you feel and what you think, except that those chemical reactions are happening in your brain, and that produces a physical result, a very small one inside your own skull, and not enough to influence the train, I'm afraid. But consciousness is a product of stuff. It doesn't seem to be the cause of stuff. You can't cause stuff with your mind. Your mind is just a product of a certain arrangement of matter. So, moving on. These sort of chemical reactions do happen, and once they happen, other molecules are produced. So different types of molecules are being created all the time. Some types of molecules came about that replicated. Replicating molecules are around all the time. Clay is an example, crystals another example. And they were eating up the resources automatically. They were just built to, sort of like an enzyme. Not exactly, but when they enact an effect, except this effect in the products around them is to generate more copies of itself and to arrange itself. Well, arranging is what clay and crystals do, and protein. That's part of it, but that's not a needed component of natural selection. Now, some of these are better than others. Some of them produce more accurate copies of themselves. Some of them produced less accurate. Some of them produced it quicker. Some of them could use different materials to copy themselves. And this created competition between the different types of replicating molecules. Now, probably originally it was very slow. In all likelihood, the first replicating molecules are slow as fuck. But it doesn't matter because there's competition there. And as they eat up the resources, the ones that do it faster and the ones that do it better and the ones that can use different resources do better. Now, why carbon is the basis of life is because carbon is flexible. Carbon can be, you can arrange carbon in so many different forms. The way it's twisted and folded in protein, like amino acids, nucleotides, stuff like that. It's fucking, it blows your mind. this sort of double helix origin of life. It shows that things arrange in patterns, that from order, disorder is expected, but from disorder sometimes you get order. On a small scale, in an open system, on a smaller scale, not in a closed system. I would never expect, be like, well, the law of thermodynamics is wrong, and order increases. But we're just some chemical scum on a planet. I mean, the laws of thermodynamics are still happening, just on a small scale. Like here, in an open system to the rest of the universe, order has been increasing, and still is increasing. So these bits of matter competed, and some of them were better than others, and this was the precursor to genes. But as everyone can see right now, genes are fucking surgical. They are surgical replicators. Natural selection, any of them that didn't do well, any of them that replicated themselves in a pattern that wasn't viable, if they ran out of resources, any of the things that really creatures, the vehicles that are being produced embryonically, through embryonic development, some hormones and stuff like that, through your genes, it's pretty much the same thing, just on a much smaller and much more simple scale. So this simple scale produced more complexity, and this complex system produced more complexity, so on and so forth. And there is no dead point where, oh, human beings are here, animals are over here, they were the sixth day, they were the fifth day, we're the sixth day, any of that bullshit. It's just not like that. There's a shitload of evidence, and it's proven and it's accepted as much as gravity is, that evolution happened. It happened. The replicators just got better. And the ones that formed protein coats or whatever made it, and the ones that used the rest of their organic material to produce something that could move them away, even at a base level, just chemical reactions through fluid or through sludge to get to the rest of the sludge to move instead of being locked up, the way crystals and clay are, would have had an advantage. And now that they've got this advantage, they fucking run with it. Now they've got mobility, and this mobility develops, and all kinds of shit happened with life. And people are like, well, bacteria, are the less complex. But again, bacteria have survived, and they've been subject to natural selection. I think they mutate faster too, so you would expect them to be more different than what they were before than we are. People talk about these, oh, there's the gene for hair and gene for this and gene for that. Well, some people refer to genes as cistrons. I know they're not talking about nucleotides. You replace one nucleotide and it's a human beings are written in a 4-letter language. All genetic life is. There's 4 letters to it that writes everything. It's just a typewriter with 4 letters, and you are just the name tape that comes out. Just that would be your genetic code that influence your embryonic development and some of your hormones and stuff like that. But a very efficient system came about. And I say came about because there's absolutely no evidence that there was a conscious being behind it. And most people are like, there was no conscious being, or there was a conscious being. Well, I wasn't fucking there. God knows. It is possible that there were aliens doing it. How fucking likely is that shit? Thanks for leaving us no evidence, assholes. But you can't say that because you don't. I mean, all evidence, rules out that this is even worth considering. But again, empirical data doesn't state that there was no conscious person there. It's just that it did happen. It happened. It came about, and it started small, and it led to more complex things. We are those more complex things. We're that result. Beyond that, oh jeez, you get the different types of animals and different things, and people seem to be they're talking about, don't be racist, don't be racist, don't be racist. You know what? Who I don't fucking care. I'm not racist against mice or ducks or white dudes or black dudes or whoever the fuck, women. I'm not sexist or racist. It doesn't really matter to me. sort of useful traits that matter. But I'm not a humanist. I don't think human beings above everything else have some sort of inherent value. I think our minds have inherent value, and human beings bear those minds. If that could be traced back to like open-ended learning, which is what I'm specifically talking about, and our ability to express ourselves and to hold an accurate model of the world around us in our mind. Like there's things like fucking stars. It's amazing that you have it exist somewhere in physics, in the physical world, in the most basic science, just physics. There's a sun out there, and we have an accurate working model in a much smaller system in here. Not only can we have that model, but we can act on it, and we can utilize, like, this room right here is not in my head. It's not happening in my head. There's actually a room here. If I go to sleep and someone pushes this bed over and smashes it on my head and I die. Like, it's not in my head. There actually is a room here. But there's an accurate working model that's being utilized in my head. And you can learn from this. There's records kept, and not just in your mind, but written and digital now. A sort of open-ended learning that we're learning more and more and more. And religion threatens that in a lot of ways. There's the number of free thinkers that have been burned at the stake, or that have been run out, or, you know, even children, when they're taught that being humble is more important than learning, or, you know, being some things like truthfulness is good for science, and it's good for human beings, and it's good for education and stuff like that, but oh my god, I've got so much to talk about when it comes to this. But I think we're speciest. Like, people talk about don't be racist, and we're fucking speciest. Like, embryos, fucking, like, useless. 100 cells, a gathering of 100 cells is guarded ardently by these, you know, Christian warriors. Oh, we gotta save the embryos, you know. Fucking zygotes must be championed. But, you know, they'll fucking, not even the most minimal rights are given to fucking, like, chimpanzee adults. Mothers. Like, where the fuck is the justice in that shit? Because we are them. Like, not literally, but that's where we came from. I mean, we were wheat, too, and we eat wheat, but they're so close to us in the tree. How can you look at something and, like, I know people have looked into a dog's eyes and, like, seen that a dog has feelings. Not our feelings, of course. They don't have the sort of giant, you know, dual-linked cerebrum with the set of nerves up top as the bridge. Of course not. Like, they're not as, like, intelligent as we are. But you can't fucking shoot a monkey into space, not a monkey, a chimpanzee into space, and, you know, not give that thing kudos. I mean, it's stupid. We're speciest. We're like, the human race is ultimate, and that's the only thing that matters. Well, I know we have survival instincts, and we want our race, or our species to survive. The reason people are racist is because genetic patterns that produce behavior that, well, this is one of the reasons people are racist. There's also social reasons, of course. Genes aren't necessarily the reasons. Think of it like adding nitrate to fucking soil when you're growing something, like growing, you know, potatoes. You're going to expect, you know, when it's added there that it grows more often. That's sort of the genetic effect. But over millions of years, it really does matter, because the ones that tend to do better are going to survive, and the ones that don't are going to get replaced. Human beings are more loving towards their family and their children, and people would give up their lives for their children. They're like, oh, it's altruistic, it's this great thing. No, it's not. Your genes are fucking telling you that. You're programmed. A mother, if you fucking isolate it from the rest of creatures, will still fucking act that way, because you're born programmed to it. Like, there's firmware up here. There's software, too, that you can write to in your brain. You can change your mind, but there's firmware there. Like, like, I guess you could probably tear it out with, like, deep meditation, like, and serious, like, you'd have to be really surgical and really determined. The human mind is a very versatile tool, but you start out with firmware on there. Like, human beings are hardwired to protect their genes. Because as I was talking about before, like these fucking protein like chains, the ones that produce survival mechanisms survive, and those that are beaten don't survive. Natural selection in nature. That's why some species make it and some species don't. There's other influences, obviously, but that's the environment part of natural selection. So these genes that make it produce us. They iterate our bodies. Now, they don't have a will, but it's easier to think of it this way. Sort of when you think of light wave propagation, you can personify it, and it makes it easier to understand that it wants to find the fastest route, sort of like water. But genes survive, and there's the ones that do are driven. They're driven to survive. They're engines, like literally in the driven word, not like a human being driven. Like, and with of course it's not perfect, but it's fucking surgical. Like, it just has to be good enough. But what has to be good enough has to be good. It has to be better than the rest of the ones around it. And over billions of years, this has produced something fucking crazy. Us. Now, we're not that much different than a chimpanzee. The fact that it took us thousands and thousands and thousands of years to learn our first upgrade. Our first technology, obviously, or the major one, was sharpening 1/2 of an axe. Sharpening 1/2 of an arrowhead. Alright, sorry, I had a phone call. I'm gonna get back to that, but I just wanted to throw this in there, that one side of the axe was sharpened. It took thousands and thousands and thousands of years before we even sharpened the other side. It was the first upgrade in human history. You know, and that's humans. We weren't that different. I mean, I think we were technically a different species at the time, but as it goes back, we were closer to chimpanzees and monkeys and ducks and bacteria, whatever, farther back in the tree. But our upgrades in technology and stuff like that have been coming faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. And I think that's important to point out, that it sort of feeds off itself. Like, we use computers to design computers is a good example. We also use computers to handle personnel at the computer company to produce computers. We use the computers to handle their paychecks, so on and so forth. And our technology feeds into designing cars, designing this, and it makes the efficiency of the entire system go, and then everything contributes to everything else, so on and so forth. And we're sort of in a wild time. That wasn't my point. My point was that even from our first upgrade, like, we aren't so inherently, like, so much better than chimpanzees. The point about us is our minds. The only cool thing about us, the only really different thing about us, is the open-ended pursuit of knowledge. Is that we could go anywhere with our knowledge, potentially, that isn't forbidden by physics. All it takes is the right knowledge on how to do something. Okay, back to the phone call. It's all good. Have fun, man. Bye. Sorry about that. Oh my god. But the genetics, the genes that produce more viable vehicles, that would be us, survive better. And they survive, and they pass on, like, that's natural selection. And that's where we came from. People are like, where did we come from? And I know young minds are always wondering, where did we come from? We came from a process of life and death, on the chopping block of nature, with the threat of death pretty much at gunpoint, proverbial gunpoint. We developed. I don't know. That leaves, it is very open-ended. Like, what's morality? What keeps me from breaking into your house and killing your children? Well, the law, really. Nothing. Nothing stops you. Nothing is stopping you from being so sinister that you can plan that, besides altruism. I mean, we might have some of your genes. That's why people are always, like, speciest. Like, human beings want to protect other human beings because we share a lot of the genes. Just like your family, you'll fucking fight people off often. At least originally, your firmware teaches you. to fucking fight, and you love your family, you fucking love the shit out of your family, and you would die for them, a large portion of them, and especially a brother or sister, or sometimes a mother and father. Children definitely. That sort of loving mother altruism is programmed into us, and father too, but father not so much in the human race necessarily. That's all software. So when you're talking about fucking altruism, you know, you might as well put it into some context, because there's reasons. There are many reasons for it, and I don't really think righteous exists. I don't think right and wrong, you know, outside of a subjective definition exist. I think they're useful in society. But anyways, this is me signing off. It was good to talk to you guys after such a long break. I'll be looking forward to seeing your comments. It's a long fucking video. If you watched all this, good shit. Peace out. Fuck off.